Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We had a little technical issue at the beginning. Welcome to the Bernalillo County Sheriff Candidate Forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico, along with our co-sponsors, Alameda, North Valley Association, and North Valley Coalition. The League is recording tonight's forum and will post it to our website, www.lvwcnm.org. The video is the property of and copyrighted by the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico. No person or entity is authorized to reproduce, edit, post, or otherwise use any portion of the video without the express written permission of the League. Before we get too far down the road, I ask each candidate to please turn off your cell phone or any other thing that makes a noise. So please turn off the ringer for your cell phone in particular. The only exception to that rule is our timekeeper. Thank you. I am Mary H. Smith of the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico and will moderate tonight's forum. Assisting tonight are League members, timekeeper Stacy Tompkins, question reviewers Michelle Metters and Mary Templeton, and Linda Miller, host of tonight's Zoom webinar and handler of the technological details. And thank you for taking care of those earlier, Linda. We invited all three candidates to tonight's forum for Bernalillo County Sheriff, John D. Allen, Kaylin Ashby Dreyer, and Paul A. Pacheco. Thank you all for agreeing to share some time with us and helping to educate the voters about yourselves and your candidacies. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization whose membership is open to both men and women over the age of 16. We were founded more than a century ago in 1920, and our mission is to encourage informed and active participation in government and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We neither support nor oppose political candidates or parties. We are committed to voter education that allows people to become and remain informed and engaged voters. Tonight's forum is designed to help achieve that critical goal of voter education. I urge you all to review the League of Women Voters educational resources to see information about your candidates, all of them, and their answers to the questions posed by the League. The first is our online voter guide at vote411.org. That slide should be up on the screen as we speak. And our printed voter guide, which is available at voting centers, community centers, libraries, and other places throughout the county. The format and rules for tonight's forum will be as follows. And all candidates, including the one that just joined, have agreed to follow these rules. First, candidates will have 60 seconds to give their opening remarks. Second, I will then ask questions of the candidates, giving each of them time to answer the same question in each round. The response time may vary depending on the number of or complexity of the particular questions asked and the amount of time remaining. And I will inform everyone in the timekeeper of that response time before each question. I will ask questions submitted by the community to the League's email address for forum questions and from the League's questions library. The League's question reviewers and I have consolidated questions on the same topic or issue and have rewritten questions for clarity and focus. I will ask the candidates as many questions about as many issues as time permits. When I mention the sheriff or sheriff's office, I am obviously referring to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office only. Because this is not a debate, rebuttals by the candidates to each other's answers will not be allowed. I encourage the candidates to address your responses to the webinar viewers and not challenge, argue with, snipe at, or question each other. Candidates, you do not have to use all of your time for your responses. The less time you take, the more questions we can ask. However, I want you to take as much time as you need within the time limits to answer the question to your satisfaction. Candidates, if you ask me to repeat the question, your allotted response time will start as soon as I begin restating the question. Please jot down the question as I ask it, so you will not need to ask me to repeat it. Please understand that the questions asked tonight were reviewed and vetted only by members of the League of Women Voters. Neither the questions nor the issues have been given to the candidates in advance of tonight's forum. Third and finally, at the end of each session, candidates will have 90 seconds to give their closing statement. I remind the candidates, and I want you all to listen up. I remind the candidates that the timekeeper is the most important person in this webinar, and you may not ignore her. When answering the questions, you must keep an eye on her. She will alert you to the time remaining for your answers, and you must stop talking when she holds up the sign that says stop. If you keep going, she will ring a bell and I will stop you. There are no exceptions to that rule. During tonight's practice session, candidates drew numbers to determine the order in which they will speak. I will rotate the questioning so that the same candidate will not always go first. So let's get started. Mr. Pacheco will present his opening remarks first. And Mr. Pacheco, you have 60 seconds.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having this forum for us. I spent 27 years with the Albuquerque Police Department, and I worked various divisions within the agency. I was a field training officer, an instructor part-time at the academy. I spent 4 years with the FBI's Violent Fugitive Task Force. I then spent another 3 years with the United States Marshals Southwest Investigative Fugitive Team. During both those assignments, I chased nothing but murderers, rapists, armed robbers, violent subjects. After I left the department, I was elected to the New Mexico House of Representatives, where I spent 2 terms. Upon leaving the New Mexico House of Representatives, I was appointed Deputy Cabinet Secretary for the Department of Corrections. I spent 4.5 years as an executive with that group. And I'm running because my 2 daughters have said they're leaving Albuquerque because of the violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 60 seconds for your opening remarks.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this forum for us. I'm running for sheriff to affect the most important issue in our community, and that is crime. My priorities are: 1, to hire and retain more deputies, invest in data-driven policing that keeps violent offenders behind bars. I'm committed to reform. That means restoring trust in the Sheriff's Department, improving relationships with local and regional law enforcement agencies, and also invest in our behavioral health systems. I'm a law enforcement professional. I'm going on 25 years. Although I retired from the Sheriff's Department, I still teach at the Law Enforcement Academy, so I'm not Law Enforcement Academy, so I'm still not retired from law enforcement in totality. I've done SWAT, I've supervised homicide, I've supervised violent crimes, I've supervised the Metro Area Task Force, and I've supervised so many areas in policy and procedure, and also training, and also at the academy. And I'm still a leading instructor at the C&M Law Enforcement Academy, still teaching our law enforcement today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dreyer, 60 seconds for your opening remarks.
My name's Killen Dreyer, and thank you for having me here tonight. I mean, unlike the other candidates, I'm actually not involved in law enforcement. I'm actually just a farmer in the North Valley, but I'm running as a civilian concerned about the overreach of power and corruption of our local law enforcement. New Mexico has the deadliest rate of shootings involving the police. And I believe also with the rise in crime, we are looking at the wrong solutions that have been suggested and tried for the past few decades and have failed and do not address the root cause of crime. And that is why I'm running, is to bring a different message to the citizens of Bernalillo County. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question, or first question, is a yes or no question. So you'll have 10 seconds at most to answer this question. I don't want to hear anything other than yes or no, please. And I'll start with you, Mr. Allen. Yes or no, do you currently hold or have you previously been awarded a certificate of completion by the New Mexico Law Enforcement Academy Director attesting to your completion of an approved law enforcement training program?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Dreyer.
No.
Alrighty, Mr. Pacheco.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the first question, I will give you, let's say 90 seconds for this question. And the question is this. The statutory definition of a sheriff's duties has remained unchanged since 1865. What, if any, amendments to this state law would you support? And we will start with you, Mr. Dreyer. 90 seconds.
Look at the definitions unstable. I do believe in I do believe in limiting the powers of a police department, and I would support constitutional amendments, or I support the current effort that we've had to end qualified immunity protection for our officers. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco. 90
Thank you.
seconds.
Thank you for the question. The Constitution is very clear. I support the Constitution and the rules and regulations that guide it as stated. I would make no changes at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
I agree with everything written, and that's still there at this time. And thinking about it, I wouldn't change anything in the Constitution, and as we can move forward.
Thank you. The next question, I'll give you 90 seconds for this one as well. And we will start the questioning with Mr. Pacheco. What do you see as the sheriff's most important responsibility?
The sheriff's most important responsibility is to protect the public, make sure that we are arresting criminals and providing safety and education to the general public. Right now, we have a lack of police officers on the street. We do not have enough deputies. They're going from call to call to call, and we are sorely lacking in our enforcement. And that is my primary and first and foremost priority, is to make sure that we are enforcing the laws and that there are enough deputies out on the street to take calls for service and to do proactive policing, which very little is being done right now. Another responsibility of the sheriff is to make sure that we promote crime prevention, that we bring back community-based policing, where we're going into the neighborhoods, we're talking to people, we're making contacts with businesses, and we are working hard with the public to make sure that we are providing a safe environment for our children and making sure that our county is safe.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 90 seconds.
The main duty for the Sheriff's Department is protecting all of you, making sure that our community is safe to live in so we can thrive, but also making sure that the department is staffed, that we have the proper amount of training, that we have the proper amount of supervision, and that we also have the proper amount of making sure that our courts are protected. A lot of people forget that. Also, in reference to domestic violence, writs of restitution, making sure that we're serving restraining orders and making sure that everyone's protected on every facet, whether that's just not putting more deputies on the streets, but that's all of the facets of the Sheriff's Department, whether it's violent crimes, whether it's homicide, and whether it's crimes against children. The main responsibility, once again, is keeping you safe, but also being budgetary responsible to make sure that our taxes just aren't raised. But at the same time, when we ask for more deputies, that it is actually allocating the people power and making sure that we run an efficient, professional department without any corruption.
Thank you. Mr. Dreyer.
Well, I believe the main role of a sheriff is to ensure that the office, and department is upholding the constitutional rights of the civilians and ensuring that the police officers protect that. And additionally, training law enforcement officers to recognize that, and maybe a bit of general public assistance. I do believe the role of police has gone overboard, and we need to get back to basically basics. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to give you 60 seconds for. And we will start the questioning with Mr. Allen. What responsibilities or duties of the sheriff's office do you think the public can be better educated about? 60 seconds, Mr. Allen.
Basically, our training and actually what we do as law enforcement officers in the state of New Mexico. I believe we failed at communicating with the public and being transparent in what we actually do and answering the questions that all of you have concerns about, such as the reason why we use deadly force. Why would we use deadly force? Search and seizure. Not only training in defensive tactics and use of force, but the totality of everything that we do as law enforcement, such as even traffic enforcement, educating all of you what we're looking for, what we're looking at. That way we have a community relationship, and that way we restore the trust and have the trust of our community. That's one of the main reasons and help that we need from all of you to make sure that we help with this crime epidemic, because community involvement is huge and communicating with all of you is the utmost importance.
Thank you. Mr. Dreyer.
I believe the role of a sheriff's office with the civilians should be to educate them about their constitutional liberties and civil rights, and educate the public on how to deal with ensure that their own officers are upholding these rights that they have been, that police officers are supposed to abide by. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Pacheco, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I think the general public knows pretty much what we're doing. I think that we need to be more communicative. I think that we need to be more responsive to the citizens of Bernalillo County. I think that by going into the neighborhoods and community-based policing, we talk a lot about this, and over the last 15 years, we've kind of drifted away from community-based policing. The general public knows. They don't need to necessarily know all the intricacies, and I don't think the general public wants to know that. They want to know that when they pick up the phone and call for a deputy, that the deputy is going to show up, and that they're going to be able to have communications with that deputy, that the deputy is going to be knowledgeable and is going to be able to explain to them any facet of an investigation, or explain and give an answer to any question that the citizen may have. The sheriff's office is a very well-trained agency. You don't have to be bad to get better, and we will get better under my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, I'll give you all 90 seconds to respond. And we will start this question and answer session with Mr. Dreyer. Here's the question. How do you envision the sheriff's office engaging with and being an active member of the community it serves? Mr. Dreyer, 90 seconds.
Well, I think what I would advocate for a different policing model, which is called community controlled policing, which is that the police departments respond to the interest of civilians with an independently elected board, rather than the interest of politicians. It was actually a very popular idea of civil rights activists in the late 60s. I think it will help ensure that there is less of a disconnect between civilians, the community, and the law enforcement agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco, you're next.
Well, I think it's just important that we listen to the public and that the deputies and our administration, our command staff are active in the community. That means whether they're involved in social issues where the deputies are asked questions, whether or not it depends on if it's a call for service. I think it's very important that the deputies are accessible. I think it's important that they get out of their cars, that they're making contacts with civilians in neighborhoods and businesses. I think we've been sorely lacking that because of the fact that there are not enough deputies out on the street at this point. And I think that we need to be respectful and responsive to the needs of the community. So my basic philosophy is that we get out of our cars and we start talking to people, and that there's an open communication between the sheriff's office and the general public. And I will facilitate that as sheriff.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
It's very important to have communication with our community. And it's just not about going to neighborhood association meetings and you see us once a quarter, or you see us once a week or once a month. They need accessibility to deputies in the department. And that just doesn't mean to command staff or a captain. It's somebody that they see every day that's patrolling their neighborhood, whether or not they're going to a business, but at the same time, the person watering their yard, asking them what's going on and what they can do. Maybe giving a phone number or a contact card, because what everybody wants is when they have a problem is they want a bottom line answer and they want a result. So when that person is having a problem, they can call that deputy that they are familiar with. And it also needs to be a network and change the, not the total culture of law enforcement, but of the sheriff's department, to make sure that we have a lot more outreach. And that's even going to birthday parties, that's going to community events. And whether that's an unincorporated area or whether it's not an unincorporated area, Bernalillo County includes the city of Albuquerque, and we need to be involved, and our outreach needs to be everywhere.
Thank you. The next question will also be 90 seconds for your answer. And we will start the answering for this round with Mr. Pacheco. How would the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office approach from a systemic level its attitude towards and responses to requests to inspect public records received from the public, the media, and others? Mr. Pacheco, 90 seconds, please.
Well, transparency is very, very important. We need to have open communications with the public. And under my administration, the sheriff's office is going to be very, very transparent. There should be no roadblocks between the community and the sheriff's office, and including myself. I'm going to be available. I will be responsive to questions. If someone needs assistance, I will have my cell phone. I've been giving out my cell phone number for 30 years, and that number is not going to change. I will continue to respond to people's questions and concerns. I think it's very, very important, being born and raised in Albuquerque and watching some of the problems that we now see. We have a disconnect within law enforcement on some level. It's very, very important that we re-engage the community and make sure that we are extremely transparent. And under my administration, we will be very transparent, we will be very open, and we will have no problem in sitting down with people who have issues. If there are problems that need to be addressed, we will be responsive to those types of issues, and we will work together with the community. And that's how we're going to get some of this crime issues under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 90 seconds.
Numbers and data are very important. And transparency also includes something that's actually tangible for our community members to look at. We know that the sheriff's department, it's very difficult to get information, and that could be from any crime stats, homicide stats, even property crime stats, which people are forgetting about. It needs to have an active website or something that the public can actually look at and at least see stats or numbers that are at least 2 weeks fresh, not 3-4 months or just quarterly. We failed at that. Even while I was at the sheriff's department, I asked for it and we didn't have any type of technology to do so. Right now we have a Motorola system at the sheriff's department, which has so many advantages. And I spoke earlier about having something tangible, and that system can do so many things, not just for our deputies to see where crime is in the area, but also for you. A great concept is also the Ring doorbell systems that we're seeing. I get alerts every day. Why can we not have some type of technology to alert the community other than Twitter, but to make sure that they can look in their neighborhoods to see what is going on, what is specifically going on, because we also need to make sure in those communities that we address the root causes, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug addiction, property crime, or violent crime. That's so important for all of us to communicate together. Like I said, we depend on our community for tips and to make sure that we have that relationship.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer.
Well, a top priority of mine is transparency with law enforcement, and I support any, I would support any effort to review from a civilian to review the sheriff's office, whether it be body cam footage, spending, or statistics. And I believe we should streamline the process further. No more, someone should not have to get a fee, to pay a fee in order to obtain the information. And additionally, we should educate the public on how to audit police officers if they believe they are abusing their powers. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question is somewhat related. And because of that, I think I'll give you 60 seconds for this question. And we will start the questioning or the answers with you, Mr. Allen. Here's the question. Will you mandate that your sheriff's office provide immediate, timely crime statistics to the public and to the FBI? And if so, how frequently will you post crime statistics on the sheriff's website? Mr. Allen, 60 seconds, please.
The answer is yes. And I believe between NIBRS and UCR, which I won't get into details there, different data reporting is different. And yes, we need to report those numbers to the FBI. We haven't done that. We do need something to, again, like I stated before, where the public can access those numbers and see what is going on in their neighborhoods. We need to have full compliance. And that also shows transparency of our department. And we're going to make mistakes. And it also shows that we can't skew numbers to see that our homicides or violent crimes are down. We need to be totally transparent to make sure that people are safe. That's our number one responsibility. But to also make sure that we're doing the correct reporting, whether that's coming out in the media, whether that's coming out with the FBI. That's how we help with our budgetary concerns. And that's how we staff our department with deputies concerning on crime stats and all the other issues and problems that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Dryer. 60 seconds.
Well, I believe that any police report should be available within 24 hours of being filed into the system. But additionally, I would also support redacting names, because the cornerstone of our justice system is innocent until proven guilty. And, when we put out names to the public, it can, especially with this, internet and high information today, if you are innocent, but your name is attached with a crime you didn't commit, your life can be wrecked. So I believe releasing names to the public until after the trial.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco, 60 seconds.
Well, absolutely. But we got to be careful about how much we're promising, because the reality is we need to make sure that the personnel are actually in those areas. So what I will promise to do is make sure that we are providing that data as quickly as possible. I know we get into these timeframes and let's say 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. The reality is it takes time to make sure that we're getting the proper data. And I disagree. I think it's real important that we're very, very accurate with our crime reports. And I think it's important that we show that transparency. And obviously, we try to minimize those mistakes. And I know that there have been mistakes, and all agencies have issues with that. So we're going to do it the right way. We're going to make sure that it's posted as soon as possible, and we're going to make sure that it's accurate. And I will make sure that that unit is properly staffed to make sure that we do that.
Thank you. The next question will be 90 seconds for an answer. And we will start the answers with Mr. Dreyer. Here's a question. What is your position on consolidating the Albuquerque Police Department and Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office? 90 seconds, Mr. Dreyer.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. Not really. I think what the sheriff's office would do if I was in charge is be a watchdog on APD. APD is notoriously corrupt, and it appears that the federal overwatch has not worked well, and I believe that a local government, a local institution, one involved in the same area, would be a better, more efficient way to look after APD.
Mr. Pacheco. 90 seconds.
We tried that back in the 90s. And so you have to have buy-in from both the county and the city. And if you recall, when we tried to do this back in the 90s, the city agreed to it. I think it came to a vote, and the city, citizens in the city voted for it, but the county didn't want it. So that's the first hurdle we'd have to have. I would argue that probably it would make some sense to merge the two agencies, but I would say that the sheriff should be still in charge of everything, being the chief law enforcement officer of the county. I know that I'm going to be looking into doing certain divisions with APD, including the air unit. We have 2 air units basically patrolling the same sky, and we're going to look into that for budgetary reasons and stuff. I think it's a very complex matter, and I know that it's going to take a lot of work and coordination between the city and the county. I would be willing to look at it. Again, I don't have a support or not support. I think it's something that we need to look at. I know that Clark County in Las Vegas has done it. I know there's some other agencies throughout the country that have actually done that and had some success with it. But anyhow, again, it's one of those, it's a very complex question, and I'm willing to look at it.
Mr. Allen, 90 seconds.
You know, I totally understand the question and the concern from the communities, specifically the citizens that live in Albuquerque city limits. And I would tell you, you always want to look at anything that can make our community and make our law enforcement better. But at this time, there are some issues, and I'll be very upfront, is with the DOJ reform that's going on with the Albuquerque Police Department, now is not the time with the crime crisis that we have and to figure out the details. And the second is the unincorporated areas. All of our people power would be pulled into the city limits where most of the crime is occurring, and the unincorporated areas would be left without any policing or few policing. So that's difficult. Yes, it is a complex issue. Could we get it done in the future? Yes, but right now is not the time. And also with the other departments from around the nation that have done so, it has taken at least 3 to 3.5 years to make sure that the department is running efficiently. And right now, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office has enough of its own problems that we need to figure out and fix before we can think about merging with another department that's within a DOJ reform. We need to make sure that we're professional, efficient, and that we're cutting down on response times and calls for service for people in both unincorporated areas and the city.
Thank you. The next question, I'll also give you 90 seconds to respond. Currently in Bernalillo County, officer-involved shootings are investigated by a multi-agency task force with the agency of the shooter designated as the lead agency. How would you address the concern that an agency leading an investigation into itself is or has the appearance of a conflict of interest? And we'll start with Mr. Pacheco, 90 seconds, please. Mr. Pacheco, you're muted again.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. No, I understand the concerns of the citizens and why they might be concerned that there would be some bias in that. I have no problem having another agency with the shoot team being the lead agency. I think that it would build some transparency. I think it would build the confidence within our civilian population that these investigations are being done in a fair and unbiased way. I do know that there are problems that come up when that situation is done, but I think the positives outweigh the negatives. And so I am not against having that type of investigation done by the multi-unit. So if it's PD and SO and the state police, and if it's an SO shooting, we have maybe the state police as the lead agency. I have no problem with that. I think that we want to make sure that we're totally transparent and that we're making sure that we're conducting these investigations in a fair and impartial way and professional, and making sure that everything is taken into account. We obviously have the district attorney's office that's also overseeing, and they're also part of those shoot teams. And the DA, obviously, they're going to make sure that things are done properly and making sure that no corners are cut and that we are doing things in a very transparent and honest way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 90 seconds.
Well, that's one of my specialties. I supervise the Metro Area Task Force Unit, and there was plenty of conflicts of interest at the Sheriff's Department with plenty of our deputy-involved shootings, also with officer-involved shootings. There's models in Washington and Georgia that I'm also looking at, but here it is. It's directly coming from the sheriff or the supervisor of the MATF. If there's a conflict of interest, it goes to another department. There's no questions asked, whether that's state police or the Albuquerque Police Department. The Rio Rancho Police Department used to also be involved, so we do need another department to provide further transparency. At the same time, we need to also make sure and look at seeing if we can fund the Attorney General's office to make sure that there's a conflict of interest with two departments, that immediately at the scene, they will be able to take over or at least be notified of what is going on, so we're transparent and we are fair from beginning to end. So not any of our personnel, none of our detectives, and of our supervisors are held in a conflict of interest, and that they are not looked at from anybody in the command staff, whether they're overreaching or not, but to make sure that it's transparent and that we can carry on with the investigation, because the community wants to make sure that we do a thorough and a fair investigation.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 90 seconds.
Well, I believe that a police department participating in leading an investigation is a conflict of interest. I support strongly that the investigation is led by something other than the police department involved, but also, I mean, I were elected sheriff, I would have my office comply with these independent investigations to ensure transparency. But I mean, a agency leading a investigation on itself is a conflict of interest, massive, and could lead to biases. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to respond. The constitutional sheriff's movement supports the view that within the county, the sheriff's law enforcement powers supersede those of any agent, officer, elected official, or employee from any level of government, including the President of the United States. What is your position on this constitutional sheriff's movement? 60 seconds, and we will start with you, Mr. Allen.
I'm against that constitutional sheriff's movement. We need to make sure that we're staying in our lane and enforcing the laws of the state of New Mexico, and specifically to crime. We don't need to be involved in elections, overstepping our bounds. Yes, we need to protect the voting warehouse and to make sure that things are done efficiently, but being overly involved in elections is not the message that we need to send to the community that we serve. And that just isn't on the on transparency, but that's also making sure that we're being responsible. Yes, again, for elections, but not being overly involved. We don't need to be involved with that movement at all.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 60 seconds.
I pretty much, I guess I support this principle. And if I were elected sheriff, I would ensure to keep out federal agencies that are seeking to violate the constitutional and civil rights and civil liberties of civilians in Bernalillo County. Some of these agencies would include ICE, the ATF, DEA. These agencies are notorious for violating the constitutional rights of civilians, disproportionately minority, which Bernalillo County is. And I would do everything. If they don't have a warrant, I will kick them out with all my power.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco, 60 seconds, please.
Well, the sheriff's position is a constitutional position. That's the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. We need to be working with our federal partners. We need to be making sure that we're enforcing the laws and that we're protecting people's property, their homes, their businesses, and that we are protecting our children and our families. And as the sheriff of Bernalillo County, I will do that. And I will work within the confines of the Constitution and whatever the Constitution says and those limitations. And I will make sure that we are following that to the letter and that we are not drifting off into the weeds and that we're not doing things that we shouldn't be doing. My primary responsibility as sheriff is to make sure I'm protecting the families of Bernalillo County, and that's what I will do.
Thank you. The next question will be also a 60-second response. And here is the question. As sheriff, would you commit to enforcing all gun laws passed by state and federal legislators, such as minimum age for buying assault weapons, requiring owners to lock up their weapons, and a prohibition on ghost guns, etc.? 60 seconds, and we'll start with you, Mr. Dryer.
You're talking about gun control of civilians? No, I believe gun control is a policy instituted with racism and classism in mind to disarm the public. But I will support controlling the guns of government agents. But in terms of civilians, no. It's guaranteed by the Second Amendment. I believe upholding it for all Americans, regardless of race, gender, unlike which some Second Amendment activists do not claim for.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco, 60 seconds.
I believe in crime control. I think that we need to be making sure that we're enforcing the laws, and laws that are written, the sheriff's office will enforce. I do believe, though, that the Second Amendment is one of our foundational amendments, and it's very, very important. And that any law that is formulated by our legislators, whether it's local, county, or state, or whether it's Congress, needs to make sure that the law is constitutional and that it will pass the constitutional test. So my feeling on the matter is that the Second Amendment is very important, and it's a foundational one, and we will enforce laws and we will arrest criminals, and we will do that in a lawful manner.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 60 seconds.
We can no longer pick and choose which laws we enforce, but law enforcement has discretion. At the same time, with gun safety that we're talking about, and the specific example is the Benny Hargrove Act, Representative Pamela Herndon is sponsoring, is to make sure that we're keeping our community safe with firearms. It's one of the first things we teach our cadets when we train them at the range is firearm safety. We can do both things, protecting the Second Amendment. And a lot of the questions that people are getting to is the red flag law. And there's a couple issues with it. There's some things that need to be amended. But at the same time, it's all about protecting our community. We see the gun violence in the streets and the problems we're having. We need to do something to make a dent and address the problems we have with firearms, but at the same time, protecting people's Second Amendment. It's as simple as that. It's not a complex issue.
Thank you. The next question will also be 60 seconds. What steps will you take to root out and terminate any deputy, recruit, or any other employee from the sheriff's office who supports, promotes, or is involved in racist or extremist behaviors? And we'll start with you, Mr. Pacheco. 60 seconds, please.
Oh, I don't need 60 seconds to answer that. It won't be tolerated in my administration. It's as simple as that. I find out that any deputy has that type of attitude, is spewing that kind of hatred, they will be immediately terminated. No questions asked. So that's my answer, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Not tolerated, but let's tell you how we address it at the same time. It needs to be caught in screening. And one of the issues that we're having is if people do get through screening and we're missing those, we're all human and we do make mistakes. It comes down to the sheriff's review. And it's been a history of sheriff's review of a cadet makes it or an applicant makes it to sheriff's review. They're pretty close to get it in and there's no further questions. That's not accepted at all in any facet of law enforcement or any job or in America in general. No, I will not tolerate it. But if it gets through at the beginning, that's something that I need to screen and make sure that we find doing the sheriff's review. And if we do find that doing the sheriff's review, obviously we need to adjust the way we're testing, screening, and the applicants we're picking to join our department.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 60 seconds.
I would fire them. It's in that their biases do not affect law enforcement. I mean, but it's also important to note that the current system of law enforcement is rooted in racism. I mean, just look at the war on drugs for an example. So I think an additional step would be needed to get rid of the system that we currently have of mass incarceration that is disproportionately targeted minorities. And this is why I believe that why there's inherently more racist people in the system of law enforcement.
Thank you. The next question will also be 60 seconds. A new law allows a judge to order a suspect charged with domestic violence or has a restraining order against them to temporarily give up their guns if the domestic violence victim can prove that their life is in danger. How will the sheriff's office enforce this law? 60 seconds, and we'll start with you, Mr. Allen.
I believe there's 3 homicides within the last year that if this law was enforced and taken care of, that we would have probably prevented those homicides. Domestic violence is a serious occurrence. We're letting it go by the wayside and not focusing on it. The biggest thing you want to prevent is a domestic violence homicide. But a lot of people are forgetting is that if law enforcement has a history of going to those homes for domestic violence, the law enforcement officer needs to petition for firearms to be taken out of the home. And everyone's going to talk about due process. That's what the courts are for. If we can save a life and prevent violence, that person is going to have a chance to get their firearm back. But we want to mitigate and we want to prevent any type of homicide or further occurrence. We need to enforce those laws. And again, if we need to adjust, then we need to amend and be very involved with legislation and also with law enforcement from around the state to see what adjustments need to be made.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 60 seconds.
I believe you're referring to the red flag laws. I I do not support it because it violates the whole principle of what our system is founded on, innocent until proven guilty. If someone, I mean, look, domestic violence is a serious issue, but I believe that if someone's firearm is going to be taken away, it needs to be gone through a trial in court, and the Constitution guarantees a fair and speedy trial. I mean, also, I believe these red flag laws are discriminatory against minorities, depending on the judge's bias. Will not enforce them the way they are.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco, 60 seconds, please.
Well, it really comes down to how the legislation is written. Our current red flag law, on the floor of the House, the sponsor was asked, does this violate people's rights? And the sponsor of the current law said, yes, it does. So the red flag law has to be written in a legal and a constitutionally upheld manner. And if that is done, then we will enforce the law. But I do agree that our formal principle is innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. So we are going to protect domestic violence victims. We're going to make sure that we protect all victims. We have let the victims slide through the cracks for far too long. My administration will bring focus back to victims and make sure that we mitigate those types of issues and make sure that we're protecting victims of domestic violence and all victims.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to shorten it up even further, keeping an eye on the clock. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this question. So it's sort of a lightning round. Here's the question. The sheriff's office currently participates in a reality television program that has cameras inside patrol cars and allows civilians to videotape encounters with the public. Are the public's privacy rights violated by this practice? In 30 seconds, and we'll start with you, Mr. Dreyer.
I do not support this because it's filming the civilians, and additionally, our tax dollars shouldn't be used to subsidize this. But yes, this is filmed. These people are usually filmed without consent of the public. So I do not support these reality shows here.
Mr. Pacheco, 30 seconds.
Well, it's my understanding that a waiver or release has to be signed anytime someone's going to be on TV. So it's my understanding that these shows, before they put anybody on television, they get to get these waivers and releases signed. I know that the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office right now is involved in a TV show. I'm going to be reviewing that, and when my transition team gets in there, we're going to make some decisions as to whether that will continue or not. But I don't want to make a statement of yes or no at this point. I want to review it first, make an educated decision.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 30 seconds.
No, we don't have time for it. I want to focus on crime. And I dealt with it doing a mobile crisis team when I was a supervisor. Yes, everybody signs a waiver, but at the same time, say we're at a behavioral health call and they're videoed and maybe they can't even speak for themselves and we're violating HIPAA. Those are a lot of issues and concerns for our community that we need to think about. So my answer would be no, I would look at it at a later time. I want to focus on crime. That's my main goal.
Thank you. The next question also will be 30 seconds. And the question is this. Do you see any benefit in continuing the aviation program? And we'll start with you, Mr. Pacheco.
No, absolutely. We are going to rebuild the air unit, and we're actually also going to be looking into maybe going into a merger with the Albuquerque Police Department. And also, I've been talking about a drone program ever since I started running back last year. We need to start employing drones for different law enforcement functions. I've been looking into it, and there's a lot of different mechanical devices that would really help us in law enforcement. But yes, we're going to rebuild the air unit.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, 30 seconds.
I don't want to think, yes, I want families to be involved. Again, the main question is, does it help the community? And what we do need to focus on is, as we rebuild the air unit, I want those families to have buy-in and be involved. But we need that air unit to assist patrol, and we also need it to assist rescue. Now, the percentage, whether it's 60-40, 70-30, I don't know yet, but to answer the question, yes, the air unit is very important to any law enforcement entity, specifically to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and to also look at other technology and things we can do to help out on such as pursuits, assisting our deputies, rescuing, and at the same time hiring and having a pilot.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 30 seconds.
I would support it only for rescue and general public assistance, but if you're talking about patrol, I do not support it because it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment on civilians' privacy to just randomly spy in the air. I mean, we've seen the same issue with our military using drones, so I do not support that use.
Thank you. And given our time, I'm going to bring to a close the question and answer session. And then I'm going to give each candidate 90 seconds to make a closing statement. And we will start the closing statements, 90 seconds, with Mr. Allen.
Thank you so much for having me here. Look, could be the first Black man elected to be sheriff. And I have the experience. I'm the only candidate here that has supervisory experience within law enforcement, whether that's the mobile crisis team, whether that's SWAT, whether that's homicide, violent crimes, policy procedures, training. I'm a cop's cop. I'm not a politician. I'll always be straightforward with you. And we have a lot of things to deal with here in Bernalillo County. And the number one issue is crime. But a lot of people are also forgetting that we have behavioral health and underlying issues of drug addiction. Not only do we need to use technology, not only do we need to make sure that we're collaborating with the Albuquerque Police Department, the District Attorney's Office, and surrounding counties, we need to also make sure that we are having community engagement and involving and being transparent with them. So not only do we restore the trust, but at the same time, we make sure that we're working with our community to solve the problem and have one common solution, and that's for us to be safe in our community. I haven't been appointed to any offices. I've earned everything that I've done in law enforcement. And I do so now to this day, being a lead instructor at the C&M Law Enforcement Academy, putting more deputies on the street, officers on the street. I don't talk about it, I'm about it. And that's what I do on an everyday basis. And we're going to get it done for Bernalillo County. Thank you for the honor and privilege of being with all of you here tonight. And I look forward to serving you further.
Thank you. Mr. Dryer, 90 seconds.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to have me speak here. My closing statement would be with this supposed increase in crime, which actually most crime is down except for homicide, we cannot repeat the same solutions that we've had for the past few decades that do not address the root causes of crime, but which actually instead have deteriorated civil liberties and created more of a police state that many civilians, including myself as someone on the autism spectrum, have to worry about because of their unsafe record with dealing with civilians. It is important to look at different solutions. One I would suggest is we should end the war on drugs and shift to a Portuguese model style of addressing drug abuse as a medical issue rather than illegal. And I hope to bring different solutions to the table to you, the voter, rather than these authoritarian methods that have failed. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco.
Thank you very much for having us. I have the most law enforcement experience. I have 27 years of law enforcement experience. I also am the only candidate who has legislative experience, spending 4 years up in the legislature. And I'm the only candidate that has executive experience, and I was appointed because I was qualified and because I have leadership skills, and that's what the sheriff's office needs. I was endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, the Albuquerque Journal, dozens of sheriffs and chiefs, including former Democratic Sheriff Joe Bowditch. I am the leader that the department needs. I am a problem solver. I am not a problem creator. I'm going to protect the citizens of Bernalillo County. I'm going to make sure that we have the best trained, best funded agency in the Southwest. And the deputies want leadership. They need leadership. And I will make sure that I fulfill that leadership role by being honest and having plenty of integrity. And I will never lie in any way, shape, or form, including court situations. I will always be honest and transparent. And I am known to be a man of integrity, and I will be a sheriff of integrity also. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for listening to my and all of our questions and answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So that concludes the substance of the forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico, we thank the viewers for your participation tonight. An informed and effective democracy needs you all. Don't forget to check out vote411.org and the League's printed voter guide available throughout the county and online at www.lwvcnm.org. Thank you to all of the League members who made this forum work. Linda Miller for being our Zoom webinar host and tech master, our timekeeper, Stacy Tompkins, our question reviewers, Michelle Metters and Mary Templeton, our forum wrangler, Steve Wentworth, and to all of the League members who helped with logistics. And finally, I thank the candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. It is at the local level that democracy really begins. So thank you all for coming tonight. Have a good evening, and don't forget to vote. Thank you all.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks.